Hey everyone, this is Mohammed, and today I have Omar with me from Google DeepMind, and we're going to be talking about all things Gemma. Omar, how are you doing today?
Hi, very good, thank you.
All right, so you guys had Gemma for lunch recently, and it's been a pretty successful launch. How
Yeah,
do you feel about it?
yeah, we are super excited. So this has been our largest open model release ever.
Hmm.
The community reaction has been amazing. The model was actually launched just 3 weeks ago,
Yeah,
and we have over 40 million downloads already. So we are seeing lots of community excitement around it.
well, that's pretty impressive. Can you tell me about what different models were released? Because I think there is a family of models,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the models go from a very, very small, so 2 billion parameters, all the way to 31 billion
Uh
parameters.
huh.
Uh, when we designed Gemma, we made sure that these were models that are developer friendly. This
Okay.
means that people can actually run these models in their own devices. So the smallest models can run in a phone. The largest model is still like small enough that it can run in a consumer GPU. So
Uh
if you
huh.
have like a workstation, a gaming computer, you can most likely run these models. Uh, the largest ones are like super good, like the most intelligence per parameter, per watt that you can get. So highly capable models at a very developer friendly
Hmm.
size.
And what are the different capabilities? Because I think the smaller models have a little different capabilities than the bigger ones, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so these are multimodal thinking models. So
Mm.
the smallest ones are designed for mobile use cases, so for running directly in the phone. They can understand audio, so you can speak to the model. It can do speech to translate the text
Uh-huh.
as well. They can also understand videos and images. The largest models don't accept audio input, but they are still like extremely capable models that can do very advanced things on the vision side of things. So it can understand images, it can understand videos as well.
And these are multimodal as well, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
multilingual as well, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
So the models were trained in over 140 languages.
uh-huh.
These are extremely good models. And one part that is important for Gemma is that it's not just a model for the US, it's a model for the whole world. So we really want to make sure that these models are accessible for the ecosystem. And there's this thing which we call the Gemma-verse. So the
Hmm.
Gemma-verse is this whole family of models built around Gemma by the community. So the community is, for example, picking Gemma, and as it's an open model, they can go and fine tune the model for a
Uh-huh.
different language. I come from Peru. An indigenous language there is called Quechua, and people are training Gemma even further to make it stronger for Quechua-to-Spanish translation, for
Oh,
example.
interesting, interesting. What are the different, I guess, like interesting applications that you have seen that developers have built in the last 3 weeks?
Yeah, so it's again just been 3 weeks. I've been seeing like people combining Gemma with other models. So using so it's an agentic model as well. So it can do
Uh-huh.
functional calling. It can pick different APIs and use them to solve different tasks. So we have seen people using Gemma combined with other models. So using it as a router or using it to call maybe like a segmentation model that is a very specific use. So that's been one part that I find exciting. The other part is that the model is really small, so we are seeing that the community is able to put the models in very, very hardware constrained
Uh,
resources. So that's quite exciting to see, because the reality is that most people out there don't have lots of GPUs, they don't have lots of TPUs. So it's very exciting to see what the community is able to use directly at home in Raspberry Pis, in Jetson Nanos, in very, very small devices.
yeah, the community can get really creative with different
Yes.
applications, right? Yeah, you kind of should touch upon routing. So, like, how do you see that? Because, like, normally when people talk about local models, they either are talking about situations where they care about privacy, right? Or maybe even like the computer resources that are, right? But it comes with a cost of intelligence, right? Uh, so how do you balance both of these, like API providers or like these high intelligence models that are behind an API and a local model, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're totally right. Like, if you want the most intelligence, you would use the largest model,
Yeah.
so you would use Gemini. But there are many things for which Gemini is capable enough, like many agentic things. I do think we are in a world in which 70, 80% of the things that you want to do in your day to day may be able to be fulfilled directly locally.
Hmm.
So I think there are a couple of things you can do. There's a startup from YC called Cactus Compute. Cactus Compute is doing this thing which is called hybrid inference. So pretty much you have a local router
Uh-huh.
that, based on the complexity of the input prompt, the prompt may be fulfilled locally by a model such as Gemma, or maybe sent to a server for a model such as Gemini. So there will be many use cases where you will still want to do an API call to a proper model that is larger and more capable, That said, there are many things for which a local model is just good enough, which is something quite interesting. Something that is also important to notice, Gemma is very small. It has very few parameters compared to much larger models.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that you have a bit of a restriction in how much knowledge you can put in a
Yeah.
single model, right? Like if you use a very small model, you should not expect that model to know all the facts about the world, right? Like you should use a larger model for that. So there's still a world in which you will have like these larger models or API calls to specific tools to get more information about the world or about specific facts.
Okay, nice. And for local models, I want to kind of go back and talk about the type of applications that you see, right? So why do we need local models or open source models for that matter?
Yeah, so open access models have a couple of different use cases. So privacy first or highly regulated areas. So if you work in the healthcare domain or in sovereign AI efforts where the data cannot leave your own servers at all, like all the data needs to stay in the local network, you will need an on-device model. The second one is if you don't have an internet connection, right? Like there are so many communities in the world that simply don't have a Wi-Fi connection, they don't have a satellite connection, but they can still have the model maybe in a phone or in a device and have access to a LLM, a powerful LLM directly locally without having to have this internet connection. So privacy, sovereign AI use cases, highly regulated fields, fully offline setup. So those are like the main ones, I think. But the other one is around fine tuning. So as an open model, you have full control of the model and you can specialize the model for different use cases. So for example, let's say that you want the model to become better at a specific domain. Let's say that in your company, the open models don't work out of the box for certain specific domains, such as finance, for example. Uh, you may still have a data set, you may still be able to train the model and improve the capabilities of that model and use that model locally or maybe in your own infrastructure or maybe in cloud services, but you do have the option to have more control over how the model behaves.
Okay, so you talked about fine tuning, right? And I think a lot of people are going to be building applications on top of Gemma. And you guys, I think for the first time released it under Apache 2.0,
Yeah.
right? So how did that go? And like, what is kind of the logic behind it?
Yeah, so the previous Gemma models had an open license called, it was like a custom Google Gemma license. It was commercially permissive, so it was actually quite permissive.
Mm-hmm.
But over the last year and a half, we have been gathering as much feedback as we could from the community. So we are talking with developers, we are talking with startups, we are talking with NGOs, we are talking with institutions, we are talking with enterprises and getting as much feedback as we can about the model capabilities, about how the model behaves, about which are the friction points that they have. And a very common friction point was the license. Many companies have a set of licenses they can use. They had many restrictions about what they could use or not. And we saw quite a bit of skepticism with the previous license. So we wanted to make sure that everyone felt like they could actually use the model for their use cases. So yeah, we changed the license to Apache. It's been just 3 weeks, but we have seen lots of excitement around the new license. So it's still early stages, but we want to see what the community builds with this model. So we're really looking forward.
Yeah, I know. I think that's really great because I think not only in terms of capabilities, but just having very like clarity on the license itself. I think, as you said, right, like it makes life easy for everyone. I do want to touch upon the agentic capabilities, right? Like especially for smaller models, right? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, so I think small agentic models can actually be extremely capable. I would not expect this model to be able to pick a whole code base and refactor the whole code base. But if you want the model to pick between 5, 10 different tools and make different API calls or tool uses directly on device, a local model most likely will be good enough. You may even still fine tune a bit the model for your own use cases. So there is the Android AI Edge Gallery. You can download it directly in your Android phone. You can play with the model directly locally. And it even has an option to play with different skills directly locally. So you can play with a fully on-device experience using Gemma as an agent. And it can do things such as control the device, turn on the flashlight, do different, like draft an email and that kind of stuff, all using tools, all locally. Of course, if you need to do a web search for a tool, then you may still need to do an API call. But I do think we're in a world in which on-device models are extremely capable for this kind of things in which you need to rewrite the text or you need to summarize or translate or do a certain like basic to somewhat complex agentic calls.
All right. That's great. Thanks for the awesome release. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for the time. That is a wrap.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.